Unity Matters.
Hello, and thank you for joining me today. I'm your host, Arnie Herz, and on today's episode of Habits of a Whole Heart on HMTV, my special guest, Rabbi Shalom Paltiel, the chief rabbi of the Chabad of Port Washington in Long Island, New York. And he's going to join me in a continuing conversation from our past episode on how this topic, Habits of a Whole Heart, is related to Judaism and what Judaism has to say about these topics. Rabbi Paltiel, thank you so much for joining me again and staying for a second episode. I thought our first conversation was very, very rich, and there was some incredible follow-up points that I'd like to bring out. So thank you again.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be back. And I just want to compliment you because you're good at this. You know, I've been on various podcasts and interviews. You know how to bring out the questions and bring out the best in your guests. So God bless. I hope your viewers know how lucky they are to have you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You make it easy for me, so thanks so much. So Rabbi, you had mentioned in the end of the last episode where we talked about once you recognize your godly reality that's connected to everything, and that harming anything in creation is really harming yourself, and that we should show that level of respect to humans, animal world, the plant world, the earth. You came back and said that it's much easier to do that for the animal world and the plant world and the earth for many people than it is with other humans. And you referenced about the Nazis, and here we are at the Holocaust Memorial Tolerance Center in Glen Cove in their studios, and we walk through and we see all the exhibits about the Nazis. Why is that the case? And how is it possible that people who care about animals could be so cruel to human beings?
I think the answer is that the animal or the plant or the table doesn't get in the way of my ego because it doesn't have its own ego necessarily. It's not competing on the same playing field. Another human being somehow creates a discomfort. People can be very comfortable with having pets, but they don't have a lot of human friends. Another human being is another image of God, another total universe with their own perspective. You know, animals are wonderful, but if an animal likes you, they just go in tandem. They belong to you. They love you. They're just always there. Somebody said, "What's the difference between your wife and your pet?" Well, try locking each one up in the trunk for an hour and see when you open up the reception that you get from your wife versus your pet. Your wife will give you what you deserve, and the pet will come and lick you and tell you how wonderful you are. It's because they don't have their own ego in that sense. They are what they are. They're more like, robotic or whatever they are, like the angel. They're wonderful, but it's not another I. And the beauty is to respect other human beings and their perspectives. Doesn't mean you have to agree with them. There's another universe in every person, and we're all part of that collective. And that's where the challenge is. You notice how people can get along with strangers. They can't get along with their own family. It's similar to that. The family of humanity has an easier time sometimes outside of its own family. Respect another human being, and then the rest will fall into place.
And what does Torah say about that? My belief, I think it's 36 times in Torah, it says to honor the stranger and treat the stranger and the orphan and the widow with the utmost respect. It seems like Torah is anticipating this and providing the tools to challenge us to go beyond the selfish, divisive means that we would normally default to.
Correct. There's a beautiful line in Pirkei Avot, Ethics of Our Fathers, which is part of the Talmud, but it's a book of ethics rather than law. And it says, there are three things that take you out of the world. What it means is that it just makes you not human. The language in Hebrew, kina, jealousy, taiva, lust, and kavod, the need for constant recognition. a little bit of those things are okay. We all want to have some ambition, some form of healthy jealousy is okay, and we all enjoy the pleasures of life, and we all want to be recognized. But when these become obsessions, it takes me out of the world. I'm not human, and I have no space for another human being. And Torah says you're bigger than that. And in fact, you're bigger when you are able to celebrate somebody else's success, somebody else's accomplishment. That means that you're, even psychologically, it means that you're confident in who you are, that you don't have to put everybody else down. There's a great story of one of the Chabad rabbis, the fifth Chabad Rebbe, and his brother was shorter than him, but older than him. So in order to be the big brother, he would get up on a chair, and their father said to them, don't lift yourself up. Actually, when he had his brother go down, sit down, he said, don't lift yourself by having others go down, lift yourself up, something like that. And it goes along to the same lines. We don't have to put other people down, and we need to celebrate other people's accomplishments. I mean, jealousy is natural, and that's why the Torah says it all these times, think about the stranger. But ultimately, when we realize this is who we really are, that's what Judaism, Hasidism, Kabbalah, Tanya helps us to recognize that the other person is just a mirror of myself, an extension of myself. I'm able to, over time, that's a lifetime journey, to start realizing when you see another person happy and successful, that's good. It's not just good for them, it's just good. It's good for you, because in truth, we're all connected.
That's an amazing concept. And I also was always fascinated by the 10 commandments. And the 10th commandment, I believe, is thou shalt not covet, which is a form of jealousy and when I think about Western society, you talked about Pirkei Avot and the three items there about covet, which is getting honored, and jealousy, and what was the third one again?
And lust.
Lust. So much of the advertising industry, so much of Western culture is built around cultivating lust, cultivating jealousy. I need this, I need that. And yet one of the 10 commandments is talking about thou shalt not covet, that you should be content with what you have. And that seems to me that so much of Torah goes against human nature, meaning the human soul, that me separateness, the fact that the I reality is we want to be better than the next person. We want more than what the other person has. We want to put ourselves on top. And that everything in Torah, all 10 commandments, goes against that human nature and brings us towards a higher godly nature. So
it's amazing. If I could just comment for a second about the 10th commandment. There's a concept that the bottom line of everything is where the essence is. That's the 10th commandment. It's the bottom line. And people often say, why did it even make it into the top 10? I mean, this is the 10 commandments. Don't kill, don't steal, believe in God, don't worship idols, don't commit adultery, honor your parents, and don't be jealous. Like, hello, I mean, it's nice not to be jealous, but it's top 10? And the answer is absolutely. It's not only top 10, it's number 10. It's the bottom line. Because ultimately, jealousy is really the cause of all the other 9. If I'm content, if I understand that there's a God who knows my name, who created me, I need to be me, I don't need to be you, then suddenly I become content. I'm happy with my parents. I'm happy with who I am. I'm happy with my lot in life. Doesn't mean I'm not ambitious, but there's a sense of contentment. And therefore, all of the jealousy comes from the fact that I'm not happy with the me and I need to be you. And your success is getting in my way. So yes, you're absolutely right. We're born with an animalistic nature just to look and I want to conquer and I want my territory. That's the animal kingdom. And God says, yeah, but you also have a godly soul besides your animal soul. And let that reign supreme. Don't squash your animal, because then you'll lose your ambition. You'll lose a lot of the things that you have that make you successful. That's not a bad thing. As we said earlier, we don't want to just become the we. We want to remain the me. But at the same time, control that animal. A pet is delicious when he's well-trained and groomed. The animal within is wonderful, but he's not in charge of my life. And therefore, we're not animals. The world is not a jungle. We're here to set the stage for a world that lives properly and decently. And that is by, when our human side or our godly side reigns supreme over our little animal. We say, no, that's not yours. That's his or hers. And that's okay. That's a good thing.
There's also a fundamental belief, and I've seen this in my own life, as I pivot between my lower self and my higher self, my contracted human identity versus my godly identity, is to remind myself that God is providing all my needs. That whatever I have is exactly what I need. And if there's something I need that I don't have, I could work towards that and accomplish that. I'm not being deprived. This notion of deprivation permeates the world. And if we could only understand that we have what we need. If I don't have $1 billion, because I don't need $1 billion. And if I need $1 billion and I don't have it, it's because I haven't created the proper channel for that $1 billion. And that once we could understand and accept that we have what we need, including the ability to manifest things that we truly need, not what we necessarily want, creates a much greater sense of contentment.
Yes. You talk about the habits of a whole heart. And we talked about it in our last segment, how, this is, from Judaism's perspective, we have the two hearts, if you will. We have the two inclinations, right? The animal and the godly. In the Hasidus vernacular, there's something called the nefesh elokit, the godly soul. Then there's something called the nefesh habahamet, the animal soul. But sometimes there's a term used, the yetzer hara, the evil inclination. And people often ask the question, what's the difference between the animal soul and the evil inclination? And Rabbi Manis Friedman gave a very clear answer to that question. The evil inclination is, a division of the animal soul. Mm-hmm. But how do I know when that voice that's calling me that I want to get something, I want to go off after that something, is coming from the animal soul, which is healthy so long it's in the direction of the human soul, or it's coming from the evil inclination? And Rabbi Friedman said, if it's something that you need, it's coming from the animal soul. It's okay. It's healthy. Don't steal for it, but work towards it. If it's something that you really don't need, you're creating this desire of something that you have no need for, you're just living in a place that's borderline evil, because then there's no end. I need everything. And I need to control everyone and everything. It's just no end, especially in our world, as you mentioned earlier, with all this advertising coming at us. The whole life becomes just a wanting and a wanting and a wanting. It's ridiculous. It's okay to have an animal soul that's healthy and has its needs. Great. And maybe a little bit more. But we don't have to drive ourselves nuts with the evil inclination that everything that I want becomes a need. It's just not true.
Beautiful. Now, we've talked a lot about the whole heart. We've examined it from different perspectives, and we could talk about this for many, many more hours. But I'd like to pivot the conversation now to the habits side. Podcast is Habits of a Whole Heart. And what from your perspective, what does Judaism say about habits? Does habits have a role? And what's the connection between habits and Judaism, and particularly mitzvahs?
So we know from psychology how powerful habits are, right? A good habit takes weeks and weeks to form and takes days to lose. I understand this is recent things that psychology has uncovered in the last 20, 30 years or what have you. Judaism talks about this from day one. Because on the one hand, Judaism is very behavioral oriented. The mitzvahs are a list of to-dos. Don't do this on Shabbat. Don't eat that. And make sure you say this prayer before you take a bite or a drink of water. It's a bunch of behaviors. On the other hand, it's very spiritual, especially when you understand the Medrash and the Talmud and the Kabbalah. And it's a personal relationship with God. It's all about creating that love relationship with God. And how do you reconcile these two things? Is this a spiritual system of emancipation, of personal growth, of going beyond the here and now? Or is it just a sense of a bunch of rules and regs? And the answer is that Judaism does not see them as separate, because one mirrors the other. Very much like within the human body. Very much the way psychology has taught us. When I behave a certain way and I make it into a habit, if I make it into a habit to say good morning to people on the street, Judaism believes, and I believe psychology would concur, I will become a better person. I will start caring for those people. This is a big principle in Judaism, which also psychology is catching up to of late. And that is, the conventional wisdom always was, the behavior follows the heart. Judaism says heart will follow behavior. We're physical beings. Yeah, but we're multi-layered. Yes, but start with the habits because that's the easiest thing to change. You can decide to tell yourself to smile to that person. I'm giving it as an example, even if you don't feel like it. But when you do that, your body affects your nervous system, affects your emotions, affects your intellect, affects your soul, and it just runs through all those levels. And tomorrow it's another challenge. Every day we're new, but hopefully it's concentric circles, and we do become refined over time. But at the end of the day, it comes down to behavior. There's never a time when I can graduate habits and just say, I feel spiritual, I feel loving. No, act it. You know, the guy who said to his wife, they were doing married couples therapy, and her complaint was that he never says, I love you. The therapist says to the husband, what do you say? He says, you know, I told her 25 years ago when we got married, I told her I loved her. If anything changes, I'll let you know. You know, no, we need the behavior. Don't love me. Act like you love me. Say it, express it. And that's huge in Judaism. It's huge. The way we behave is huge. It's the will of God. But why is it so much the will of God that I should do the mitzvah in this and that way and the other way and behave a certain way to people? Because ultimately, in the end, that brings out the inner oneness, and I start experiencing it emotionally, etc. And that's also the reason why when we help another person, we end up feeling better about ourselves. I'm in this business. I mean, people will call me up when they're having a bad day. And you know what I tell them to do? Call your mother. Go visit your bubby. Go stop into the hospital and look for a patient who's lonely. And invariably, they'll call me back and say, Rabbi, I'm on a high. I never had a better day. It's because we are one organic system. Our behavior is not separate. When we act like animals, we feel like animals. When we act like human beings, we feel great.
So I want to take this to another level here. So clearly that when we act in a way that reflects the unity of our connection to other human beings, when we're living out of our godly soul, and we act out that way, it's going to feed that sense of wholeness and fullness and completion. And what I think I'm trying to get to is that, yeah, good deeds are great. When I need to feel uplifted, I'll go to the hospital, I'll do this and that. So we understand that connection. Habits imply consistency, a rigor, a daily or weekly or monthly or a combination of a routine where you don't have to think about it. You don't have to call your rabbi to have him remind you to go to the hospital. You're just doing it. And it seems to me, from my experience with Judaism, that the 613 mitzvahs, which is 248 things we need to avoid, 365 every day of the year of things to do, or I get them wrong. It's the reverse. 365 things to avoid and 248 things to do become habitual. We wake up in the morning, you mentioned the Moda'ani. First thing you wake up in the morning, when I wake up, is I say this Moda'ani prayer, which is thanking God for restoring my life, just to become aware of what a miracle it is to be alive, to what a miracle it is and how immense it is to just be alive. To just start your day with that is incredible. And then you proceed step by step, automated processes, a washing of hands to remind yourself that you're a holy being. You walk between doors and you touch a mezuzah to remember that the space you're going into is holy. So anyway, life has these habits, and it seems like the more we can make it habitual, the more we'll be able to live live more out of our godly self and less out of our animal soul. And it actually becomes almost like a scientific and formulaic, which is the counterpoint to the immense philosophical depth of it. So habits, very formulaic, of a whole heart, which is the result of going through this very minute procedures. Any thoughts on that?
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. I'm not going to do justice to this, but I read somewhere that some of the greatest inventors and musicians and artists of history, some of the most accomplished people, who were the most out of the box, lived very rigorous lives. They had daily schedules. They followed routines because that's the way we work optimally. I think we see it in nature. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west every day. And I guess that's the nature of nature. Consistency and repetition. And the best way to be the best you is to find the right behaviors. If you're a Jew, it's the mitzvahs. I want to just tell your viewers that today we don't have the Holy Temple, so the list isn't quite so long of 248 positive things to do, which is a little scary maybe for people. There's about a total of 87 that are still available, which boils down to Shabbos and kosher and blessings and being a decent person. But absolutely, it's been proven, and we're part of nature, and we got to live that way. Make your system, make certain convictions that you'll live by, and that makes you a better person.
Well, one of the things that I was thinking about, you're talking about very successful people and their incredible discipline, is that so much of society focuses on freedom. We should be free to do whatever we want to do. And when you think about Torah or any kind of a spiritual discipline, it's discipline. It's taking away your freedom. And I think about we're now in the NBA playoffs, and of course a number of very elite athletes. And the best athletes have very little freedom. They're working all the time. They have a very strict discipline of what they eat, who they hang out with, what they do, what their routine is, especially during the playoffs. It's even a further heightened level. And I find that, interesting that those who are most successful are very disciplined and purposely take away their own freedom. And of course, we just celebrated Passover, which is about freedom. But we also understand that Passover is just phase one. It became free of the physical enslavement, but now we're in what's known as the counting of the Omer, moving towards what's known as Shavuos, which is where we receive the Torah. So it's freedom from the physical enslavement to Egypt's Pharaoh, to a place of where we become committed to something greater than ourselves. And so that's, to me, it's Judaism, and life is not really about freedom. It's about commitment to a much higher ideal. Curious to get your thoughts on that.
So it's obvious that anyone who wants to do anything with their life is going to have to make a commitment to a discipline. If I do what I want or what I think I want, lie on the couch all day and watch movies and eat popcorn and other junk, is that freedom? Maybe, but you're nothing. You're going to become depressed and sick and whatever. So any decent accomplishment takes discipline. But here's how I would word it. You mentioned Passover. There are two words, freedom and liberation and liberty. They're not the same. Freedom in Hebrew means chofesh, which the root of the word comes from chipus. I'm searching. I haven't found who I am, and I'm searching, and I want to just do what I want. I want to taste that. I want to try this. I want that. Liberation, the Hebrew word, is cherut. Cherut comes from the root of charut, engraved, which means finding the stuff that you're made of. The reason why we feel good when we go through a hard day's work, rather than when we just sit on the couch and do nothing, even though the latter seems like more freedom, the first one, you're liberated. You're in control of your time. You won't know how to overcome laziness and your moods and whatever it is. You are liberated. You're being you. You're ben chorin. Because you are accessing your charut, that which is ingrained in you, which is your human being. You have a soul, you have a mission, you have a purpose. You're being true to you. That's what liberation, that's what liberty means. Freedom means I have no identity. I'm just in search of whatever my identity might be or the next moment of pleasure. It's a very sad way to be.
That's fascinating. And I think about America and the foundation of America, and it speaks to liberty and not freedom. And what we're really, to bring this whole, is that the habits of a whole heart are seeking to liberate our godly reality and give it, which is often hidden and not given much time and attention, to become fully expressed into our lives. And so I would love to have you on for a third episode and to continue this conversation. We're coming to an end on the second episode, but I have some ideas for the next one. That's takes off from where we just left off. So I hope our listeners will tune into the next episode. And I want to just thank you for tuning in to this episode of Habits of a Whole Heart on HMTV. I appreciate my guest, Rabbi Shalom Paltiel, for sharing his wonderful insights and wisdom on our podcast. Be sure to subscribe, share, and stay connected for more engaging conversations. Until next time, take care and be well.